Again, this final module is on the importance of expressing appreciation for the blessings that come our way. And every day, I really want to let people in jail and prison know that I am grateful to you. And that's not only to the people that are serving the sentences, but it's also to the people who bring these programs inside. I knew how important it was for me to have this vision of hope of how I could come back home and build a life. And that really started for me because Socrates inspired me at the start of my journey. And then many other people inspired me along the journey. And you will have read about all that by now, because hopefully you've gone through each of the 9 previous modules, which really began with the overview, just kind of talking about the importance of making values-based, goal-oriented decisions, and then going forward in the second. I hope that this becomes as fluent to you as it is to me. I started serving this sentence with this vision of how I wanted to come back home, and I am really hopeful that you are visualizing how you are going to come back home, because it is so important to start sowing seeds today for the future you want to build in the weeks, months, years, and decades ahead. And all of the guidance that helped me while I was going through prison came from leaders who told us that you have to start by defining success. You have to define success. It's not something that I can do for anyone. It's not something that your case manager can do, your teacher can do, your wife can do, or anybody else. It's you. You have to become the architect of your future. And to the extent you start doing that today, you will find many people that are becoming invested in you and trying to help you along the way. But it's also important to realize I think it's really important to realize how difficult it is to build a life after somebody's been in prison. It's also difficult to start preparing for success while you're in prison. And it's difficult because we get all of these negative messages all around us, these messages that are telling us, well, what does it take to live in prison? And those messages frequently put us on a really bad path. They put us on a path that leads to struggle and challenges for your children, for your family, and for you. And I don't want that for anybody. I want everybody to be able to come back to society strong and learn opportunities or position themselves to seize opportunities or to create their own opportunities. And all of that starts with a really disciplined, strategic plan, starting with defining success. And then once you've defined success as you want it, you can then start setting those really clear goals that align with success. Now, I know that I am repeating myself through these modules, but it's because I want them to become as fluent for you as they are for me, because this is what really guided me through. It's what I do today in building my businesses right now. And even a business like this one, where I create content and I just try to distribute it to jails and prisons across America. All of this is really a business. It may be a nonprofit, but it is still a business. It's a business that requires an investment in capital tools, such as the technology that's needed to build these products and the time to learn how to use that technology. So these are things that I am grateful for, that the preparations that I made while I was in prison put me on a path to live the life that I wanted to lead when I got out of prison, where I don't have to be afraid or embarrassed about the bad decisions that I made when I was 20, but rather I could start showing how preparing for success while in prison can lead to real opportunities when a person comes home. And that message, to me, is more important now than at any other time, because the world has changed in so many ways since the pandemic that started to plague the world in 2020. I've had to reinvent myself many times, as you will read about through the different courses. By now, I hope you will have finished Earning Freedom, but you will see it was always those preparations that I made while I was in prison that led to more success when I came out of prison. So that's why Earning Freedom was a part of this course, an inherent integral part of this course. I wanted to show people what does it take to maintain a high level of energy and discipline while somebody is going through really long times in prison. And a long time, of course, is in the eyes of the beholder. If somebody's serving a year, I'm not going to diminish that as a short time. That's a long time. If somebody is serving 90 days, that is a long time. Some people who go through our programs are in jail for a couple of weeks because they got convicted of a DWI offense or something along those lines. The reality, anytime somebody is taken out of society and their liberty is taken away from them, they have an opportunity to recalibrate. And as somebody who went through 26 years, I always feel as if I have a duty to help people see what they can become rather than get sunk into despondency from what they're going through right now. And that's really the purpose of this kind of supplemental video. Most all the modules only include 3 videos: the lesson, the interview, and then the assessment. But this module is the last time that I'm going to speak with you in this course. And so I wanted to give this other additional video on the importance of being authentic. And I'll tell you about what that means just after I give this another summary on what this course is all about, because I definitely hope that you are finding value in this message and you're incorporating it into your life. To the extent that you do, I am a big believer that you can become successful after release, but you've got to prepare for success after release. So after a person defines success, the next step, of course, is to set those goals that align with how you define success. And then it's about going forward with the right attitude, that 100% commitment. I hope that is something that you see in everything that Prison Professors produces. It's 100% commitment to success. I've never asked anybody to do anything that I didn't do, and I am not still doing that. I didn't do while I was in prison, and that I am not still doing right now. I served my time in prisons of every security level, from high security penitentiaries to medium security federal correctional institutions to low security federal prisons to minimum security camps to a halfway house and then on home confinement in dozens of facilities across the country. And if this would have worked for me in only one prison, as I've said before, somebody may be able to say, well, that was just luck. But as you should have seen through Earning Freedom, or what I hope that you would have seen in Earning Freedom, is that regardless of where authorities confined me, whether it was starting out in the penitentiary in Atlanta, I could start making progress. What's an example of that progress? I could persuade a university to admit me into school. I found mentors who came to visit me in prison and began investing themselves in helping me. I was able to keep a clean disciplinary record in prison and always focus, even though I had a 45-year sentence, always focus on how I wanted to emerge. And it was difficult because I kept getting inundated with this message of you got nothing coming. If it was coming from the system itself, or if it was coming from other prisoners, were giving me bad advice, or what I considered to be bad advice on how to adjust in prison. So I want you thinking not about where you are, but where you're going next. And for me, remember, I transitioned from a high security penitentiary to a medium security prison, but it didn't happen by accident. There was a very methodical process of getting there. If you remember from the book, it was visiting with my mentor in the penitentiary and telling him it was time for me to try to go, and then architecting these steps of writing an article in a peer-reviewed journal, then sending it to the director of education in Washington, D.C., who oversaw the Bureau of Prisons education departments, then coordinating permission for my mentor to be able to travel to different prisons, and then leveraging some of the relationships of the support network I had outside to influence leaders in the Bureau of Prisons to transfer me to the prison where I wanted to go, which was McKean. And then in that medium security prison, that's where I got my master's degree. And then I went to low security prisons. And as you read in Earning Freedom, that's where I began this career of investing in the stock market and start to build income. It's where I was successful in persuading Carol to marry me inside of a prison and to nurture that relationship through the last 10 years of my sentence, and then get to minimum security camps and begin publishing books with big publishers. And all of that led to that career that happened for me when I was still in a halfway house, where I got hired to teach at San Francisco State University. All of that is something I feel extreme gratitude and I'm so grateful to all of the people that made it happen, including the first officer that was inside of a jail that passed me the book, Plato's Republic and A Treasury of Philosophy, so that I could start learning about how to think differently. If you can start learning how to think differently, you can learn how to reject a lot of the negative influences we hear in prison. You could reject the criminal lifestyle. You could start finding new positive people to be around to help you on your journey. And then you could start building a record that leads to more and more opportunities. None of this happens by accident. I can't tell you how many people reach out to us at Prison Professors and they want to join us. And I welcome an opportunity to bring people on board. In fact, everybody that works for any of the companies that I own are formerly incarcerated. They're people that have gone through challenges and overcome, but they've also can demonstrate that they embody this values-based, goal-oriented strategy of defining success, setting goals, moving forward with the right attitude, making sure that they aspire to something more, then creating a series of action steps that go from one step to the next step to the next step. They have their own accountability metrics, and they're able to keep themselves aware of opportunities they can seize or create, but also bring other people into their life and prosper and build a pathway to prosper. They celebrate every small achievement, and they understand that any blessings that come our way are not really our doing, but they are the benefit of what we receive from so many people. We are so gifted to live in America. Even if we're in prison, we have opportunities to prepare ourselves for something better. And through our course, you've seen multiple people that were once serving life sentences, but today they're out here in society. How did that happen? Well, when I interview them, you are finding that they did the same thing. They visualized success, they set a path, and they had to do so in the most difficult, challenging circumstances. They had to do so while they were still locked in a prison, not knowing if they would ever get out. But now they're out here. And they are not just barely getting by, they are prospering in the way that they define prospering. It may not be the way that you define it, it may not be the way that I define it, but it's the way that they define it. And that's what success is all about. It's when we are able to live the life that we want to live, and not living in accordance with what other people tell us we have to do. There are too many people that measure success as with a really low barrier. But the reality that I experience and that I try to share with others is that if you prepare for success, if you model your adjustment patterns after successful individuals and not after the failure that failure message that exists in so many other prisons that convince people to say, hey, learn how to live in prison first, be in here, don't think about the world outside, focus on your time in here. That's a pathway that leads people back to prison. That's a pathway that leads to either homelessness, unemployment, underemployment, or a trip back to prison. And those aren't my words. Those are words that we could. Those are facts that you could just look at statistics. Recidivism we could measure or define in many different ways, depending on whether we're saying recidivism is new criminal conduct, or recidivism means within a 3-year period or a 5-year period somebody goes back to prison. All I'm saying recidivism is, it's just getting back into the system where your liberty is taken from you again. The costs of that are just so overwhelming. I mean, imagine you've come home, you've finally secured and getting a job, and you've got some credit, and you start building, and you start building, and you start building, and then new criminal conduct comes, and it results in you going back to prison for something that's kind of foolish. It doesn't matter if you committed a new crime. With prison professors, we interact with people who go back to prison for technical violations. In fact, that's one of the most significant ways that people go back to prison, is they violate their conditions of release. One fellow I knew had a condition of release that he could not apply for credit, but his child was turning 16, and the kid asked his dad to co-sign for him on a loan, and the guy did the co-signing on the loan. But just before he was about to finish supervised release, the probation officer ran his credit report, and he saw that this credit report took a hit on because he applied for a loan. They sent the guy back to prison for 90 days. Think about all of the complications that come with that, right? He went back to prison. As a result of going back to prison, he couldn't pay rent on the apartment that he had signed a 1-year lease on, and so they sued him for bad credit. Then he lost his car loan, and even though he was only doing 90 days in prison, it completely obliterated all the work he did prior to that to succeed after prison. Not because he broke the law, but because he violated the conditions of supervised release. And in my view, that is recidivism. That is going back. That is not making forward progress. Well, if we want to make forward progress every day, we truly have to be authentic. And so, this video that's part of appreciation, it's really also the importance of helping you define being authentic. If I would have gone into the prison system, into any prison, and tried to pretend that I was something that I was not, like I was a shot caller, or I was some kind of guy who was going to make a reputation as a bad guy in prison, it wouldn't have been authentic, and people would have seen that instantaneously. Okay, there's no way I could have manipulated somebody in prison to think that I'm a shot caller, or I'm a gang leader, or I'm something along those lines, because that is not how I define success. Success for me was not living in prison, it was succeeding upon release. And if you can answer what is success upon release for you, you can embark upon that 10-module course that we've just gone through, but you could also say, well, I have to be authentic. And authentic means you have to think like you are the CEO of your own life. You have to really not only define success, but you have to build your plan. And the plan that you're building today will differ, and it will become more powerful as you develop more skills and more resources. So define success, you create your plan, you put your priorities in place. And again, I'm not asking you to do anything that I didn't do. You can read about it in Earning Freedom. You could read about it in Prison, my 8,344th day. You could see it in the additional content materials that I will provide as part of this course, to the extent your prison will allow me to bring it in. But just look at all of the examples of what I'm talking about, putting priorities in place. When I went to prison, remember, I said I have to focus not on what I want to do in prison, but on what are the stakeholders, my avatar, is going to expect from me, the people I'm going to meet in the future. I don't know who they are. They don't know who I am, but I know that I want to earn their trust and earn their respect and earn their support. And so I have to think, what will they want? Those were my priorities. Figure that out, and that's what led to my strategy, which was I was going to focus on getting an education. I was going to focus on contributing to society in meaningful, measurable ways, as you can see through the various books that I wrote, right, while I was in prison, that tell this whole story, right? It's an ongoing effort. And then I published many books, and then through that effort, build a strong support network. Those were the three: education, contributing to society, build a strong support network. If I could do that, new opportunities would open. I didn't know it, but I believed it. And so those were the priorities. Define success, put a plan together, put your priorities in place, and then you've got to develop your tools, your tactics, and your resources. So what does that mean? Well, in my case, what that meant was I had to bring mentors like the academics that came into my life while I was in prison. Those mentors became resources for me. The books that I wrote began to be used in universities across the country, and it was because I did that while I was in prison that they offered me a job to become a professor when I got out of prison. And then all of that material, tools, tactics, and resources, I would leverage as I grew and eventually use those resources and that story to begin a career as a real estate investor. Then from making money in real estate, then it became investing more money in financial markets, whether it was the stock market or whether it was cryptocurrencies or whether it was building different businesses that I could later sell or exit and have income streams coming from that. All of these strategies are what's led me to where I am today. Now, 9 full years since I completed my obligation, right? Is it 9 years? This is 2022. I finished. Yeah, 9 full years since I completed my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons. But it never stopped, right? There were always goals, but yet it was always following this pathway of defining success, putting a plan together, putting priorities in place, developing tools, tactics, and resources, and then executing the plan day after day, week after week, month after month. It's what keeps me on track right now. And it hasn't all been easy. I've become successful in sense that I've built businesses that have generated millions of dollars in both earnings and revenues. I've lost millions of dollars. I've earned it back, because it's always going through this strategy. But one thing I hope that you see is regardless of how many businesses or responsibilities are taking my time, I never stop working to bring more information back to people in jail and prison, because I'm grateful to all of justice impacted people. That's what's really helped me along the path, is those lessons that I learned in prison. Staff members who encouraged me. Yes, there were some staff members that made it difficult, but we have to persevere. We have to say things are neither good nor bad, they just are. And the way that we think can define what we become. Regardless if I'm in a high security penitentiary, if I'm in a jail facing a life sentence, I can always start to think about how can I build meaning into my life. And if you can think that, I am absolutely confident that you could improve outcomes for your life. But you've got to be authentic. You can't fake it. There's nothing in our program, there's nothing that I wouldn't be able to defend the decisions that I made. And I have been, I have had problems where people have come after me because I've been financially successful. And it's okay. It's just part of the journey. One thing I'll say is I'm always going to be honest and truthful. And I'm providing this message because it's the kind of message that would have kept me reading. It would have kept me focused on developing strong verbal communication skills, strong writing skills, strong critical thinking skills. So I'm understanding the opportunity costs that accompany every decision we make. It would have inspired me to reject the negativity and focus on what I could do, understanding that sometimes I have to live in struggle. Sometimes I have to go through challenges in order to become more successful or in order to reach a higher potential. And as I wrote, it didn't happen in one prison. It happened in high security penitentiaries, medium security prisons, low security prisons, minimum security camps. It happened when I came home and built businesses and had to deal with all the complexities of being a justice impacted person. But I always believe in you, and I will always work hard to prove worthy of trust and support. Some people will say all the things that I am showing looks like I am bragging. But I am trying to disrupt this mindset that people have, that if you've served time in prison, you are always going to be destined to a life of mediocrity or struggle. I've never believed that. And I am not just using that in words. I am trying to show you with deeds and with actions. I've been happily married for 20 years, and I got married inside of a prison when I still had 10 years to go. I've built businesses. I still build businesses, but I will always reach back in to try and share what I learned from leaders to people in prison. That's my way of showing appreciation. It's my way of being grateful for the lessons that I have learned, and it's my way of hoping to prove worthy of the trust that you've placed in me. So thank you so much for being a part of our community at Prison Professors. My name is Michael Santos, and I believe in you.